approached Perks, you knew you wanted to write a book, and for this one, it was that scene that kind of came into your head. So that was like a very visual thing. How did you figure out that you wanted this to be a book rather than a screenplay, considering that your first idea was like a very visual cinematic?
Well, it was this. It was what I learned from doing Perks as a movie. The greatest artistic experience I've ever had, the most fulfilling, was writing the book of Perks and then being able to adapt it. There's something about that, the 1-2 punch of that, that I found so gratifying. And so I just wanted to do it again. Honestly, I wrote the book so I could adapt it almost. And it wasn't even, and also I wanted to, writing the screenplay of Perks made me read the book again after, God, 10 or 11 years. And that woke me up to like, why aren't you doing this? Like, this is a very, very lovely book. You should try this again, but try it in different ways, So that was it. I just love books. I love to write them. And I've read a lot more since my dad, since I was 12. And maybe I could, follow up on that. So that's why. It was always, there's nothing like a young dream. And we all know it's like the thing that you wanted when you were 12, that has power and that never will let you go. It's like everybody that I know that's in films, everybody wants to win an Oscar. Just because when you're 14, 12, 13, whenever that first dream happened, that's the only thing you knew. There's many accolades in the world. There's many things to be proud of, or even able to make a movie, it's a miracle. But that's what you dream of. So yeah, I think that's why. It's a young dream, and it'll never go away. And it won't be 20 years until my next one. So, so here we go. I'm very excited to reignite this passion. Yes.
Hi. I've got 2 questions for you. The first one is more of a comment with a question.
Great.
I just wanted to say that the Perks of Being a Wallflower trailer was probably one of the best trailers I've ever seen for a movie.
Great. Thank you.
And I was actually working at the movie theater when I first saw it, and it's just that connection of, I think this movie is going to change my life when I see it. Did you ever have that experience with a trailer or a movie that you knew instantly was speaking to you in a way that...
Well, the trailer, it's interesting. The most profound movie experiences that I've ever had happened walking in completely blind and not knowing anything.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky enough, like my buddy Mark, my best friend in high school, he's still a dear friend, he was like, hey, you want to go to the dentist theater? I think some Robin Williams movie was playing. I thought, great, Robin Williams is hilarious. And it was Dead Poets Society.
Yeah.
So I went to watch it, I was like, oh, that's a weird ass title. For a Robin Williams comedy, and I go in, and that movie was, that's still my favorite movie.
Yeah.
Because at 19, when I saw it, I've never had a movie affect me as deeply as that did at that time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's like Wizard of Oz, Star Wars, love them all. But that moment, wow. The Matrix, same deal. I walk in, I'm like, huh. Let's see what's this about. Keanu Reeves, I like him. Speed was good. And wow, what was that? And here's a very profound one for me. Maybe Once,
Mm-hmm.
right? That came out, 2007, I want to say. I just heard from my friend Ron, who's a filmmaker, a wonderful filmmaker. I heard that, it's like this Irish movie, you should go to it. So I went, and I was like one of those, and it actually, that movie I was doing in television in Jericho, and I'm very proud of that show.
Yeah.
But I saw that movie once, and I was like, I'm kind of wasting my life a little bit. I should be doing that. That's what I meant to do. And I started, inspired directly by that movie, I started writing the Perks of Being a Wallflower screenplay, because I had to try it again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say those. The trailer's a little different. What I've learned more and more is that marketing people are geniuses.
Mm-hmm.
And especially because I love the horror genre, obviously I'm starting to dabble in it a little bit. They can make genuinely not scary movies seem terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
So you see too, like, oh my God, this is gonna be the greatest horror movie since The Shining, and then you go and you're like, literally every scare is
every single one.
It keeps happening. So now, and I guess most recently Joker. I haven't seen Joker.
Oh, yeah.
That trailer is fantastic. I was like, wow, if it's even like 10% of that, I'm going to really enjoy this film. Once I'm off tour, I'm going to go check out Joker. So,
I heard it's good.
So that was question 1. What was question 2?
You've talked about this a lot, but I'm curious about if you would ever do an extended cut of Perks. Like, have they ever talked to you about doing that, or do you have any interest in doing that? And what would you
That
put?
is fascinating.
What would you put back in if
Yes,
you?
here we go. I love this story.
Okay.
So, the 20th anniversary of Perks is here.
Yep.
20 and a half, really, technically, but, you know, what the hell. So Perks, so because the 20th anniversary edition of the book came out, and because Imaginary Friend came out, I spoke to the movie studio and said, hey, you know, maybe we could do something like that. So I went in, and I was actually very proud of this moment. I went in with my producers, Leanne and Russ. They were my producers, they produced Juno, they were wonderful. Russ is actually from Chicago. And so we went in and we just, all right, just all the deleted scenes, let's throw them in there.
Yeah.
And then, so we did that on a Thursday, and then Friday we watched it. And everything we added made it less. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and don't get me wrong, I like extended cuts, it's fun. I like the extended Lord of the Rings. And so I have that. I like seeing the footage. But I was like, nah. And I watched it and said, no, the movie's the movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Adding in, they're all the deleted scenes, by the way.
Yeah.
You can see it. It's not like I hid them.
Yep.
But somehow those trees just ruined the forest a little bit. I don't know why. Other than one thing I have learned as a filmmaker, even more than as a novelist, is that the emotional calibration, like I love the poem, like Secret Santa Party, I love that moment. But if you do that, the kiss is less. I don't know why. If you have the whole thing with Charlie's sister where she becomes pregnant, and then suddenly the cafeteria thing where Brad and Patrick fight is less. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to watch. But yeah, and I learned that's why there were 4 less minutes with Wonder, because, or you know, only 4 minutes of deleted scenes, because I realized there's only so much people can take. And so, you know, since I really love doing, you know, I'll do the same thing for Dear Evan Hansen. You know, it's just, there's only so much, and I don't know why, but there is. So, very cool questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes?
I'm a middle school teacher, and first
God
of all,
bless you.
first of all, thank you so much for what you did with Wonder, because you took a lot of reluctant readers that I've seen and watched the movie and then turned on to the book.
Oh, great. That's wow.
No, and
Thank
I really love seeing that. This is a selfish question for me, because I have conferences the next 2 days with parents. What do you say, and we teach the Outsiders right now, it's kind of a coming of age book.
Oh, yeah.
What do you say to the parents that really push back to themes that are introduced in books and things like that, when you know as a teacher or a writer that the student is really needing that book? And
Oh, you mean directly like the parent? Well, I'll say this, and I'll speak about it. And actually, I'm about to talk about a lady named Donna who is here tonight. I'm going to talk about that part A in terms of banning, and then specifically like the comments. Here it is. Over the years, I don't know if you know this or not, my book has been banned and challenged many times. And Donna Smith is right there. She's a librarian from Wisconsin. She's a very dear friend of mine, and we became acquainted because my book was being challenged in Wisconsin, where she's from. And luckily, she contacted me early. Usually, I hear after the fact. It was early, and so I was able to write a letter to the people who were challenging the book. And what I said to them is, listen, I totally respect where you're coming from, and I totally respect the fact that, you know, if the school were forcing your child over your objections to read this book, I would be on your side. You can elect something else, it's okay. But I know for a fact, and I even shared part of this letter with the group, I know for a fact that there are people, young people who were going to kill themselves, read my book and decided not to. This is true, it's happened, I have the letters, and so I never know I don't know where the next kid lives. So listen, you don't want to read it, God bless you. But like, please don't deny it to a community, because, you know, that kid might need it that day, all right? Sadly, that group and it was a small group, could have cared less about that next kid, and that broke my heart, because, you know, banning as cool as it is, maybe it's bragging rights or whatever, like I was banned in Boston. And you know, it is kind of, I guess it's kind of cool, but at the same time, it's really actually very sad, because if you're publishing a book and you want to create a dialogue, all it is silence. It's all banning is silence. Okay, so that's like one of my experience. And well, by the way, I should say, the reason why I pointed Donna out is the fact that that she won. She led the fight, and she won in our community, and the book is still there, and God bless her. And we are friends forever. Like, how long have we been friends now?
I don't even know.
15 years?
Yeah.
Something like that. Anyway, and every time I'm in Chicago, she drives down from Wisconsin, and I'm going to buy you like a lobster dinner tonight. So, if there's lobster, please somebody tell us there's lobster. Okay, so, in terms of specifically, that's different, because that's a thing. For your situation, I would say, what I would say is something akin to, listen, I know that your kid is not seeing this, but their friends might be, and they might experience it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years from now. And like, my feeling is, wouldn't it be great to show some of these issues in a very safe and very like a good, safe education context? Because I can't tell you, like, you could say, I've seen it happen again and again, that like, here's the kid who doesn't know anything that comes to peer pressure, because they have no idea that it's even pressure. They have no idea what it is. Here's the kid who actually knows what's coming, and they might say no, whereas that person says yes. That is the power of knowledge and information. These stories, if they're told from a good, almost like a wholesome point of view, because I'm not trying to exploit. Essie Hind wasn't. She was 18 when she wrote it. John Green, Paul, the list goes on and on and on. People who really care about young people and want to talk about these issues to empower them, not to disempower them. That's what I would share. I don't know if it will ever work. You'll always have some pushback, and if they really push hard enough, maybe let it slide and you switch out the book or whatever. Some people have done that, but if they're pushing back on the outsiders, maybe don't give them mine. Stay gold pony boy, and it's like, oh wow, day rate, thanks. But thank you for caring that much and for trying to empower those kids. That's amazing. My hat goes off to you. These educators are everything as far as I'm concerned. And I can tell you about maybe 7 English teachers, very, very in great detail, how they changed my life forever. So anyway, thanks for what you did. It's amazing. Right behind you was yes.
I have 2 questions as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay. So the poem is one of my favorite moments in the University of Wallflower, and I was wondering if you could tell us like the backstory of where that came from.
The poem, okay. The poem, believe it or not, as Charlie writes about it, when I wrote Perks, okay, so that poem was given to me by my sister, Xerox. It was given to her Xerox by her friend, Pat Como. And it was given to Pat. He was in a youth group. His mom was a minister or a youth group leader in Texas, and he was at a camp. So it was in a journal. It was basically, the rumor was, yeah, no, that's right. No, I didn't know that part yet. That Pat, the rumor was there was some kid suicide note. That's what the poem was. And that's what we were all told, and that was the suburban legend. Okay. So, when I was writing Perks, and I was like, all right, I want Charlie to give something so special to Patrick for Secret Santa, and I'm typing. I'm like, what is it? And it was sticking on my wall in New York. I went, that's it. Just like it was given to me, because that's my favorite poem of all time. Because it just was like given to me. I want to put it in my book, and that way I can, no matter how many people read it, they'll have this poem. If my book is nothing else than to deliver the poem to as many people as pick the book, then I will have done my job for the world a little bit. So, I do it, my publishers love it, and then they say, you have to figure out who wrote that poem. Because we can't just put it in a book, it's copyright infringement. And I said, I heard of some kid suicide note, but listen, you have to confirm it, or else we can't use it. I said, okay. So I call Pat Como, he calls his mom, this is all pre-internet, and, or really pre-Google, I think. And his mom finds the old journal that it was in, that's what Pat got it. And it was edited, this journal was edited by a guy named Dr. Earl Roon, who's an educator. So I said to Pat's mother, I think it was like Denver school system, something like that, blah, blah, blah. So I called Denver school system. Hi, Dr. Earl Roon, please. He's retired, but I'll try to get him your information. Great. So I get a call at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. I'll never forget. So I'm like, I'm kind of asleep. And a ring, and I'm like, oh, hello? And this old oh, sir, thank you so much. Listen, you edited a youth group kind of pamphlet, literary pamphlet thing. And there's this wonderful poem in it that there's no author. Do you know who wrote that poem? And he's like, I did. Right? Do you understand? Like, and I burst into tears because I thought the person that wrote that amazing poem was dead. And to know that not only was it not some kid's suicide note, but it was this educator who dedicated 5 decades of his life to helping young people, like our friend here. You know, he was an award-winning teacher in the Denver system. He was a really renowned person. He was so nice. He goes, hey, you want to put in your book? Wow, that's so nice. Yeah, no problem. I'll sign whatever. Don't worry about it. I don't want any money. Just, wow, thanks. I'm so flattered. I'm like, okay, thank you, sir. And so, anyway, he gave me the permission, and kind of the rest is history. That is the history of the poem. And it was remarkable to find out that he was this wonderful educator.
How long did that take you?
That took me weeks to figure out, you know. Like I said, for the internet now, you're like, click the class. You know what I mean? Like Dr. Earl Room, it's like, oh, that's some address. Oh, he has a criminal record. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable what's happened. He wasn't a criminal. So that was pretty good.
And then I'm a huge musical lover, so I'm really excited that you're working on Dear Evan Hansen.
Oh, great.
And how did you get involved in that project?
Well, Dear Evan Hansen I saw it was like a feeling. I was in New York, I forget what for, and I remember calling my assistant Kelsey and saying, listen, can you get me Dear Evan Hansen tickets? Because you know, I just have a feeling I have to see this show, and I don't know why. So she gets me the tickets. They weren't complicated. It's like I was busy doing book stuff. Actually, I was in New York for this, and I saw it, and I loved it, and it was such a beautiful show. And I loved the music, and I left thinking, you know, I've done 2 screenplays of musicals, and I knew I wasn't going to write it. I said, I really want to help this book writer, Stephen Levinson, who's so brilliant. I want to help him figure out what this is, because this could really help a lot of people. And so, anyway, I met Mark Platt, the producer, and Ben Platt's dad, who played Evan, although I didn't see him, I saw this guy, Taylor. So I met the producers, and I said, hey, I really like the show. Like, thank you. We're actually, in months ago by, I just mentioned that I liked it. And then I bumped into Adam Siegel, his number 2, at a friend of mine's party, a birthday party, and I said, what are you guys doing with that? He's like, you know, it might be happening, we'll see. So then they called me in, I talked to them, I talked to Stephen Levinson, I talked to Pascal and Paul, and they all approved of me, and they told me very, very sweet that Pursuing Wallflower was actually an influence of theirs. It was a thing that led to Evan Hansen in a way. And so, with their blessing, I basically walked into Universal Studios and they said, well, so I spent the last 15 years of my life writing musicals, movie musicals, and writing sensitive portrayals of young people. So, hire me, you know what I mean? And they did. And it was that simple. I was kind of the prototype director, and with Mark and company's blessing, they hired me. I'm so grateful. And Stephen Levinson is doing a great job in the screenplay, and I really hope to be shooting in May. So you're so happy. Yes, ma'am.
I kind of want to jump into his question. I majored in fiction in college, and I just graduated, and I took a fiction and censorship class. It was amazing, and we did a semester-long project where we had to pick a book that endured censorship issues or banning issues, and because Pursuing Wallflower was one of the pivotal books in my life, I really wanted to do it because I knew it endured a lot of that. I did a lot of research on you and your writing process and the book, but I kind of wanted to know when you handed over that manuscript and you labeled this like a young adult teen book, did the editors be like, you know what, some of these things, some of these scenes are like a little too sensitive, a little too much, have you considered cutting them, and then how did you handle that when you were an editor?
I don't know. The only thing that I got from the editor, believe it or not, the editor is Greer Hendricks, and I don't know if you read thrillers, but she is now a writer, and she wrote the #1 New York Times bestseller, An Anonymous Girl with Sarah McKenna. And anyway, she's amazing. You know, it was really interesting when the book was published, because there were some people within the literary community that were very cynical about MTV Books. And they thought, oh, MTV Books, all it is like, it's this big corporation that's trying to exploit teens and all this stuff. It's really when really MTV Books to me was Greer Hendricks and the publisher, Eduardo Brandon. The only note that I got from Greer, you know, and there were some like, little things, but like she said, you know, who Dear Friend is was much vaguer in my second draft than it was in the third. And she really asked me to kind of try to clarify for the reader a little bit more so they don't feel like a letdown if they don't know who Dear Friend is. And Eduardo Brandon had said, listen, there's so many stories of trauma within the thing, like Mayor Elizabeth Howard and a couple other people. He said, you know, it just might be one too many or two too many, but he didn't force me anything. He was really saying, I think if you take some away, that the ones that remain will be more powerful. That's all he said. That was it. You know, I will say though, that's because I found a great team. Those two were amazing. A year earlier, this is 1997, the summer of. So I have my two drafts, and I'm going around and looking for an agent, and I can't get one. For about a year, I couldn't get one. And I remember meeting with people, and at the time, you know, even like really well-meaning people, there's one say like, you know, well, you're dealing with homosexuality with a lot of sensitivity, but I don't know about this drug use. So they were the censors, a lot of the agents. And I remember there's one agent in particular, a really nice guy. He did nonfiction. He said, look, I would take you on if I was fiction, but I'm not. He's like, but listen, I think you got a really tough climate in you because YA is dead. And this is my favorite quote is, if the Catcher in the Rye were written today, I don't know what would happen to it, right? And I went, okay. It sold 65 million copies. You know, really? Okay. I didn't know that. So then a year later, just by complete coincidence, or I'll tell you the story, it's a fun story. So I wrote the line, as you know, if you like perks, we accept the love we think we deserve. A friend of mine, a screenwriter friend, because I went to this, it's so interesting, because I went to the Sundance Film Festival, I got into the Sundance Labs, and I met this guy named Christopher McQuarrie, who wrote The Usual Suspects, which is an amazing movie. Now he does all the Mission Impossible films, writes and directs them. And so we became buddies, and at the time, he had the worst luck with dating, and he reads my line, we accept the love we think we deserve, and he goes, he's on a plane, he's like, you know what am I doing? And that, armed with that line, 2 days later, he's at a birthday party with this girl he was always crazy about that he thought he never had a chance with. So he said, what the hell? And now they've been married 20 years, I think. And they have two beautiful daughters. And so she happened to go to Yale with the head of MTV Books, Eduardo Brandon, and a literary agent from ICM. His real name is actually Jack Horner. And two phone calls after being in the desert for like over a year, I had a deal. And the day I got the phone call, they were going to publish my book. Last day I read it with a day job. That was 21 years ago. And it was a remarkable, or a little bit more than that, remarkable time. So it could, you know, and that year was very special, 1999, because my book and then Lori Halse Anderson's Speak, which is an amazing book, we were kind of like the he said, she said, of like this new kind of realistic fiction for YA. And it happened, and then, you know, there have been so many amazing people that have followed. And some of them were like John Green, who's a lovely person. He was nice enough to give me a quote for this book. I don't know, I'm very proud to be part of that resurgence of that thing.
Can I ask a quick follow-up then?
Please.
Then when you were portraying scenes like Charlie finally coming to terms with like what happened with his aunt, or Sam's like sexual experience,
Yes.
how do you go about portraying that on screen without going too far? Like, you need just subtle enough for you.
Well,
You know
on
what I'm
screen?
saying? Yeah, on screen.
Well, I had, my thing about the adaptation on screen, because you're right, film is much more visceral, it's much more literal, and you have to be very, your respect has to go to like, the ceiling. So, when someone reads a book, they're in charge, they're the boss, period, that's it. When people watch a movie, they're not. You know what I mean? Like, if you're reading a book, you can say, oh, you're picturing Charlie, Sam, Patrick, you're picturing all these things. If it gets too much, you put it down. Yeah, you can hit pause in a movie, but it's a little different. So in doing that, I had a rule, which is when I wrote Charlie's memories, his breakthrough, and then his breakdown, I wrote in a way that if you're young enough, you don't quite get it. There are a lot of people, believe it or not, a lot of people that don't understand any of the twist, you know, the revelation. And I did the movie in a very similar way, where I didn't want to trigger anybody. You know, not that this is a long time ago, I didn't even know about trigger words or safe space or any of that. I didn't think that way. It was more of a respect thing. Like, it's not up to me if you're not ready to look at whatever it is that you relate to, it's not my job to make it happen prematurely. But at the same time, it's also not my job to avoid it and pretend like these things don't happen, just like you face. So I try to do it with the utmost care. Here's the lovely thing, and I'll share this as an artist and you're a fellow writer. I made the movie Perks for many reasons. One of them was inspired by once. I wanted to create a movie that people could share. I never really understood selfishly what I would get out of it, other than a chance to direct again, and that's fun and everything else. I never really knew why I was so driven in after all these years to do it. And I'll tell you why. That moment you're talking about, the Anne Helen moment, and then Charlie's breakdown when you see the three Charlies on the street, and you see he has all these things, and he has a panic attack. And so I filmed it. So it was a remarkable experience to write that in a screenplay, then film the footage, direct the actors, pick the costumes, pick the production design, then to cut it again, and again, and again, and again, and again, to test it against this piece of score, against that piece of score, to then do the color correction, then to do the mixing. And the process of doing it over and over and over and over again, and like manipulating my own footage. When I was done, I literally had, and I finished that process 8 years ago, I've literally had one panic attack since for something that was something completely unrelated. And just one. And it's like all that stuff is gone now. It's out of my body, it's out of my brain, and now it's up on a screen for someone to help somebody else. So to me, over the years, when everyone says like I relate to that, or I relate to that moment, or you understand how I feel, I always say back to them, well, that's lovely because that means you understand how I feel. And I don't believe that the writer's above the reader. I believe it's this. Same with the director and viewer. So respect is how I did the restraint. Because I knew if I put it like this, people they can't, it's not fair. And also because there's a reason why we sweep these things under the rug, because they're horribly uncomfortable. So if you're going to talk about them, you have to do it with delicacy and care, regardless of the medium. Yes?
How did Pieces come about, the short story?
Well, Pieces came about, wow, you're a deep cut guy.
When you read it and you just try to absorb everything that, I find.
Well, Pieces was, so really it was Greer, my editor, who's, at the time, and I think, so Perks was a good seller for them. And so I guess at the time I was the biggest name that came out of that whole thing, and she just said, would you do this as kind of a favor? And I said, of course. I will gladly help any young writers out. I would love to do that. And I really enjoyed doing it. I really enjoyed kind of choosing she really edited it. I wrote the foreword. And so, but still, it was really fun. I remember we did this one event at a bookstore in New York. It was the only event I ever did for it. And all these authors were there. And because there wasn't time to get everybody up on the stage, I read excerpts of 6 stories in front of the authors. And it was really, really special to be able to do that. Because it was fun to lend my name. So yeah, Pieces. You're blowing my mind.
It's a good collection of stories. Following up this.
Yeah, they're very talented young people, and it was really cool. So thank you for your question. It's fun. Yes.
What's your favorite scene in Rent?
My favorite scene in Rent. You mean the movie or the play? Both. The play, my favorite scene is Will I love that song. And especially when I started doing research on Jonathan Larson's process, I have all of his notes. I have a demo, 3 CDs of him singing the entire score by himself in demo form. And so I did a real deep dive with that research. And I know that Will I Lose My Dignity is something that he overheard. He went to a support group for people with HIV/AIDS, and this is before the cocktail and before they started to figure that out. So everyone that was at that place was really worried that this was a death sentence. And the fact that faced with death, the only thing that this particular young man was worried about was, will I lose my dignity? And that Jonathan Larson. So I'll always love that. I know it's not the big climactic moment. It's not Mimi, it's not finale B and all those things, but that's always the soft spot. In terms of the movie, think it's probably another day because I was, another day and also it was without you. Because I wrote so much of that montage, and I just wanted to use this as a way to bind Mimi and Roger together. And I was really moved that Chris Columbus used so much of my writing in that moment. So yeah, I would say that. Yes?
So how did you decide that this would be a horror? So that first scene of like the cloud that's winking could go a lot of different ways.
Sure.
So how did it develop into horror?
Well, I think that it was just a genre that I love. As I mentioned, I love Stephen King. He's my favorite writer, and listen. I'd like to pretend that I'm all highbrow, and if you gave me 25 movies to take on a deserted island, that I would choose like all the Palme d'Or winners. But I would be very hard pressed to give up John Carpenter's Halloween, Kubrick's The Shining, The Exorcist, Sixth Sense, so I love, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead. Basically, pretty much be all horror in like Once and Sideways and Dead Poet Society. I just love it. I love the genre. And so, yeah. And also, I love the idea, because I explore some dark themes in Perks, I felt like the idea, they just kind of lend themselves. I know it's a different tone, but I get to talk about, here's a good example. Of why I chose horror. It's two things. So as you know, if you know Perks, is I write about childhood memories a lot, and I like to do it. Some of them are mine, some of them are invented, but I love that time of life. So I thought about things that unify us, like when I did the Perks movie, and we all know feeling like that dork against the wall and coming off the wall and having the courage to do it. I was thinking about Saturday morning cartoons, as simple as that. Now it's a little different. Everything's on demand Netflix, but every kid knows what it's like. Oh, I was in school, yay! I'm going to no offense. I get to wake up Saturday morning and I get to watch television. This morning, this is the best, right? And I thought how fun it would be. Just thought of this moment where Christopher's watching his favorite TV show. It's called Bad Cat. And here's Bad Cat doing things. Seen the episode 20 times, and then Bad Cat stops and goes, "Oh, hi, Christopher. Are you enjoying the show?"
I just read that scene.
Huh?
I just read that scene.
Yeah, and so the idea of this, your favorite character, and then Christopher saying, "Oh, I can hear you, buddy. How you doing? Hey, can you tell me a secret? I told you about the skeleton, buddy, right?" I just love writing that. I was like, that's the creepiest thing in the world. I love it. I was like, what is it, and you know the scene, but some of you don't know the scene where it's he goes, if you don't tell us who's helping you, buddy, something's gonna happen to your mom. What's gonna happen to her? Well, if you don't help us, it's gonna, and then the volume goes down. And he goes, I can't hear you. Oh, it doesn't happen, and the volume goes down. He's just I can't hear you. He's well, you turn up the volume, buddy. And he does the remote, and then he's just oh, no, not on the remote, on the TV, or else it doesn't work. Oh, buddy. And then he walks to the television. That's why I wrote horror. Everything just changed. It's so fun to do. So there's that.